My ex-husband called me an idiot because I don't care that his cheating partner lost the baby. I'm 36, and my ex-husband Tom, who is 35, left me for his coworker Tami, who is 25. 2 years ago, I never liked her, even before I found out about her relationship. The first time I met her at a work event, she told me while she was pregnant with my youngest son. Improve your wife game or it could. This woman literally came with him to help pack the day he moved and tried to have a private conversation with me about how she wanted our relationship to be in the future because she was going to be in my life. Then she jokingly said, "I told you I would steal him." I'm not going to lie, I'm grateful she did because when my ex made a comment about her being 23 and her brain not being fully developed, it repulsed me so much that it broke my heart. I got everything in the divorce because I caught him in his cloud of adventure, and I agreed to 50-50 shared custody for the sake of our children. I'm civil for the sake of my kids so that we can both attend events without drama, but aside from that, honestly, I don't care the least bit. Around June, Tami came instead of Tom to pick up the kids and practically jumped towards me to show off her engagement ring, saying she wanted me as a bridesmaid along with my daughters, something I didn't hear because I was in a hurry taking our cat to the vet. According to Tom's messages a few hours later, she got upset because I only murmured something during her entire conversation. The same thing happened in September when she told me she was pregnant, which again. She was annoyed by my lack of interest in December when she told me at the moment I opened the car door. Tom will finally have a son. To which I sarcastically replied, I'm sure Mr. Tom is thrilled to have an heir to take over his lands and titles, which also caused drama because Tom's family found it amusing when Tami was speaking ill of me. December was the last time I saw her until today during the deliveries with Tom as they approached me. I noticed that Tami no longer looked pregnant. Tami said through tears, "We lost the baby." I didn't respond, I just told Tom that our second daughter has a birthday party tomorrow at 3, and the oldest has gymnastics at 5. Tami literally yelled at me that I was heartless and bitter, then grabbed the girls' bags and left. Tom said that he could show a bit of humanity towards me despite my feelings. She is the stepmother of my children. I told Tom that I didn't care what she was going through because outside of our kids, I didn't care about her, and I didn't owe her anything, especially pity. He called me an idiot along with other things and left. Generally, this wouldn't bother me, but my ex-in-laws. Those with whom I have a good relationship have told me that I should have shown empathy towards Tami, or at least pretended to care about the well-being of the children. User comments added, "You don't have to do anything for her, it's about co-parenting with your ex." I find it strange that she shares personal details about her life, maybe she doesn't have friends or something like that, but that's not your problem. At the same office party where she told me to improve my wife game. Some colleagues I have known for a long time told me that it's not good because of how direct you are, dear. You are enduring a horrible situation. Contact and serenity, you are protecting your children, and young immature woman, why should you worry about their discomfort? I admit that it's a difficult loss, it's as if I wanted you to congratulate her on her relationship with your ex-husband and empathize with her problems. Your ex and their fiancé are going crazy, stay strong. Congratulations on starting a new life with your family. Once, she said that given my age, should be mature for the sake of the children and that we should have a united front, forming a friendship. I won't lie, I stood there with my mouth agape, in a state of shock for longer than I want to admit. Moreover, tell your ex-in-laws. I would love to see them take the right path with the person who really wanted to destroy a home and did so with mine. I owe her nothing. She deserves everything. The karma I received was more information. I am civil with both of them, I have never prevented them from coming to my house when events or parties coincided with my time. I give money to my daughters and them. I help with gifts for Father's Day or birthdays. I told my ex from the beginning that it's all about the kids, nothing more after that. Leave me alone, I would never speak ill of him to the kids, don't get me wrong. At the beginning, I spoke poorly of both of them to my family and friends, but now I couldn't care less. I'll say that Tami is a good stepmother, which makes me happy. And just in case you're wondering, these conversations with Tami sometimes happen in front of the kids. While she is talking to me, they head to the car, give me a goodbye kiss, and say, "I love you." Except for our last meeting, we never raised our voices, and our conversations always lasted between 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the event. She said she wanted to be friends and told people like my ex-in-laws that I can't leave the past behind for the sake of the kids. She even called me, "Pick me." My oldest daughter told her father that I have never said a bad word about them. So she wouldn't allow it either and wouldn't share any information about me. Both T and Tami have asked the girls multiple questions in the past and tried to convince them that I was a bad person. During the maid of honor situation, my oldest daughter told me and her ex-grandmother that I told my ex I would take him back to court. If it ever happened again and your family said they would support me. Our oldest is 13 years old, and then we have girls who are 12, 7, and 2 years old. So I'm going to let them form their own opinions about him as they grow up. I can blame Tom for many things, but his love for his children is not one of them. If Tami ever hurt you, I know he wouldn't tolerate it, and my ex-in-laws would act quickly as well. They're not married yet, I don't know why. Honestly, I didn't ask. I did ask for wedding dates because my two oldest wanted to have their hair and makeup done professionally for their father's wedding, but he never gave me a date. Maybe they postponed the wedding until after the baby was born. I don't know. Tom said that I should have been more mature for the sake of the girls because Tami was doing something special for us like an olive branch, and apparently, he gave me a long speech. Sorry, when she asked, I'm going to be honest, she could have said something, but my cat was extremely sick and vomiting. So I was more interested in taking him to the vet. I'm finally enjoying my life. Honestly, single life is so underestimated. I adopted 2 older cats last week because I discovered at my local book club that our shelter has a monthly end-of-life event so you can give a loving home to an older cat before the end. I think when my kids grow up, I will be the crazy cat lady that everyone thinks is a witch. Update today: I sent a message to Tom telling him that due to Tami's mental state, I would prefer that he or his mom take care of all the pickups from now on. Also, if Tami's mental health worsens, I want the girls to be with me full-time for a couple of weeks until it's a healthier environment for them. Tom tried to call me, but I replied by text, I prefer messages, and he said he wanted to have an honest conversation. Yes, if that is not going to happen, I asked him if it involved the girls, and he said yes, but it was also about all of us in the future and the relationship he wants us to have. He basically wanted family therapy with him, me, and the girls. I told him that if he thought the girls needed to see a therapist, I would be happy to find one that we both agreed on, but time and again, he kept bringing it back to us. So after a few hours knowing that it was going nowhere, I simply left it on read, called my ex-in-laws, and told them the situation because I didn't want to be involved in anything between Tami and Tom. Unless my children were involved, I reminded them that I had expressed multiple times that I didn't care and that I wanted nothing more than a civil co-parenting relationship. I told them that while I value my friendship with the family, I needed to reduce contact, and it happened again. My mother-in-law apologized, saying she was very emotional because, at the end of the day, I took her son, and she was heartbroken. Besides, the baby was her grandchild. Which I completely understand now. This is where it gets strange. Also appeared in my house now. I have seen enough real crime. It's like knowing that I shouldn't open the door. So I talked and recorded with her through the door camera. She was crying, saying she was sorry and that she just wanted to be my friend. Then she said I needed to forgive her because she lost her baby as karma for what she did to me. She said other things, but I couldn't understand her. I called the police and then my brother and Tom. She wasn't arrested or anything, but Tom spoke with my brother and said he would take her home. They agreed that the best thing for now is for her to have the girls full-time. My daughters are safe at home, and my brother will stay with me for the foreseeable future. I will see a lawyer on Monday to talk about full custody and a restraining order because I have a feeling that it's going to get worse. Before that, I was just telling Tami to leave my property. Because I didn't want to listen to her. I don't know why I got involved in this, because I was expecting a quiet weekend. I would also like to tell the people in my last post who called me jealous or bitter that I have nothing to be jealous of. Someone who cheats on you is not a prize. He is the problem for Tami now. And for those of you who think that saying, I don't care about my ex's life, means that I haven't moved on because I don't want to be friends with him or Tami, please understand that your ex moved on when they asked you to leave them alone. They are not playing hard to get, they really don't want to talk to you. Story 2, a dream case for a lawyer. My parents against the bank. Before I begin, I need to provide all the context of the environment. This was in 1973, 50 years ago. Banks operated differently back then, particularly smaller banks in rural areas. They were not managed the same way as larger city banks. There were far fewer federal regulations, and in a smaller community, people didn't always follow them anyway. I'm quite sure they don't always follow them now either. So my parents had enough money to build a small country house in the countryside. The small bank in the city approved the mortgage, and the bank signed a contract to give Bob the money to build the house. Bob turns out he was a supervisor all over the city, leaving his subordinates clueless about doing the actual work. The construction took longer and longer with more and more work that had to be thrown out and redone. We're not talking about using the wrong paint color or nailing some crooked trim. The architect forgot to erase a line on the plans, and the builders constructed a wall through the bathtub. My mother was told, "Don't put anything heavy in the kitchen cabinets because they were attached to the cardboard and not to the studs, using just a few ceiling nails through the back of each cabinet. The garage door opening was framed in the living room instead of towards the driveway," and so on. When the bank representative showed up for the final inspection, my parents saw him in the front yard and refused to approve Bob's work. The representative got angry since the bank had paid Bob a lot of money. He headed to the front door and pulled on the doorknob, at which point the entire door, including the frame, fell on him. It had simply been placed, not nailed in place. The bank called Bob, who eventually showed up to supervise the work himself. The only problem was that Bob was no better at building a house than his subordinates. My parents they still refused to give their approval for the house. My mother was a housewife in an unpleasant rental with 2 small children while my dad worked 2 jobs. Throughout this process, the bank and Bob treated them very poorly, harassing my mom and lying to my dad. What should have been an exciting moment for my parents was ruined. My mom cried a lot, and my dad became depressed. Eventually, the bank threatened my parents with foreclosure, and Bob threatened to sue my parents for breach of contract because the bank refused to pay more money, so my exhausted parents went to a lawyer and gave him all the details about plumbing issues, electrical problems, tiles, all the unfortunate mess. My parents were scared. All they had was their little savings for the down payment. So if this turned into a long legal battle, the bank and Bob would win the lawyer. Tom was kind. But my dad said he could tell that he and Mom were doomed by Tom's facial expressions as he went through the documents. Then, abruptly, Tom smiled and said, "Let's gather everyone for a meeting tomorrow," he told my parents. So my parents. Tom, the bank representative, the bank's lawyer. Bob and Bob's lawyer met at the bank. Tom didn't give anyone else time to start, he said. "Well, my clients have decided that they no longer want this house, please take it off the market." Everyone else started laughing. "Take it off? Have you gone crazy?" Tom, with a grand and theatrical gesture, placed a document on the table. "My clients are the owners of the land on which the house is built, they no longer want the house. Take the house from the land of my clients." Bob's lawyer stared intently at the deed, then turned and looked at Bob. "You built a house on land that you don't own." Bob nodded as the bank's lawyer began to shout at the bank representative. "They did not finance the land on which the house is located." The representative stammered. No," Tom said firmly. "As I mentioned, gentlemen, they are invading my client's land. I expect the house to be removed and the land returned to its original state immediately." My dad said he would remember the blank stares from everyone on the other side of the table. They passed between them for the rest of their lives. Of course the bank could foreclose on a mortgage for a house that wouldn't exist by the end of the week with no way of recovering the money. They weren't even owners of the land on which it was built. Bob lost the 50% he had paid out of his own pocket. In addition, he had to tear down the house and remove it. Furthermore, the bank would surely want him to repay the initial 50% they had given him. They could have sued my parents. Of course, a foreclosure would have meant a bad credit history for my parents in the future. They could have lost their down payment, but signing the house in its state at that moment would have meant thousands and thousands of dollars in cash to replace and repair everything from the roof to the basement before the house could be safely habitable. The bank knew that my parents didn't have that kind of money. They were the ones who approved the mortgage. Suddenly, my parents were good people. It was all a misunderstanding. The bank and Bob couldn't do enough for them. The house was brought back to the original plans and specifications immediately, at no additional cost to my parents, but at a considerable cost to Bob. My parents signed the mortgage. Bob received the rest of his money and nearly broke even in the construction. The bank representative was fired, and Tom, the extraordinary lawyer, gained a triumphant story to tell other lawyers for the rest of his life.